Emmanuel Church tragedy. On the night of June 17, 2015, a small Bible study group gathered inside one of the oldest black churches in America. They prayed, they discussed scripture, and they welcomed a quiet young man who had just walked through the door. For nearly an hour, he sat among them, listening, watching. No one inside the room suspected that the stranger they had just welcomed had already made a deadly decision. Minutes later, the peaceful study would turn into one of the most horrifying crimes in modern American history. This is the story of what happened inside Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, and the 9 lives that would never return home. A church with a long memory. Long before that tragic night, Mother Emmanuel had survived centuries of struggle. Founded in 1816, it became one of the oldest African American congregations in the United States. But its early history was far from peaceful. In the 1800s, authorities shut the church down after a planned slave uprising was linked to one of its members, Denmark Vesey. 4 years afterward, worshippers were forced to meet in secret. Despite the pressure, the congregation endured. Eventually, the church was rebuilt and reopened. Over time, Mother Emmanuel became far more than a place of worship. It became a symbol of resilience, a symbol of faith. And a pillar of the black community in Charleston. By 2015, the church was led by Clementa C. Pinckney, a respected pastor and state senator admired across South Carolina. Every Wednesday night, a small group gathered for Bible study. It was simple, quiet, just a few members reading scripture and reflecting together. But on June 17th, someone new arrived, and everything changed. Build tension for next scene. Building tension. The stranger at around 8:16 p.m. A young man walked through the church doors. He was 21 years old. His name was Dylan Roof. He didn't say much at first. He simply stood near the doorway as the group continued their discussion. Inside the room were about a dozen people, members of the congregation who had attended Bible study many times before. When they noticed the unfamiliar face, they did what the church had always done. They welcomed him. They invited him to sit down. And he did. For nearly an hour, Roof sat quietly among them. He occasionally spoke during the discussion. To everyone in the room, he appeared to be just another visitor, someone curious about faith, someone looking for community. But hidden inside a small bag he had brought with him was a handgun, and investigators would later learn that Roof had not come to learn about scripture. He had come with a plan. The moment everything changed as the Bible study continued. The group discussed passages from the book of Mark. The atmosphere was calm, peaceful. Near the end of the meeting, Pastor Pinckney prepared to close the session with prayer. Heads began to bow, eyes closed. And in that quiet moment, the stranger stood up. What happened next unfolded in seconds. The peaceful room erupted into chaos. Members of the group realized something was terribly wrong. Within minutes, emergency calls began flooding local dispatchers. The first reports reached authorities around 9:05 p.m. inside the church. The scene was devastating. By the time the violence ended, -1 members of the congregation had been killed. Among them was Pastor Pinckney, the man who had welcomed the young visitor earlier that evening. The victims were teachers, parents, community leaders, people who had come to church on a Wednesday night simply to pray together. The entire attack lasted only minutes, but its impact would ripple across the entire nation. The twist. A survivor. Amid the horror inside the room, one person survived under extraordinary circumstances. Her name was Polly Shepard. She had been seated during the Bible study when the violence began. As the room fell silent, Shepard realized she was still alive. At one point, the attacker noticed her. According to her later testimony, he told her he was leaving her alive so she could tell others what had happened. Moments later, he walked out of the church. Just like that, the entire attack had lasted about 6 minutes. But outside the building, an enormous investigation was already beginning. Shift to investigation. News of the tragedy spread. rapidly through Charleston. Police arrived at the church and immediately began searching for the suspect. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from nearby cameras. Soon, they captured a clear image of the young man who had entered the church earlier that night. Authorities released the photo to the public. Within hours, the entire country was searching for the same face. Tips poured in. Less than 24 hours after the attack, police located the suspect more than 200 miles away. He had driven across state lines, but his escape didn't last long. During a traffic stop in North Carolina, officers arrested Dylan Roof without incident. For a grieving community, the arrest brought a small sense of relief, but investigators still needed to answer one haunting question. Why? As detectives examined Roof's background, they uncovered disturbing evidence, online writings, photographs, personal statements. In these materials, Roof expressed extremist beliefs and racial hatred. Authorities concluded the attack had been deliberately motivated by racial ideology. Because of this, the crime was classified not only as murder, but also as a federal hate crime and an act of domestic terrorism. The tragedy ignited national conversations about racism, extremism, and violence in America. But for the families of the victims, the focus remained on the people they had lost. 9 members of their community, 9 lives taken in a place that was supposed to be safe. Courtroom. Justice in 2016. The case went to federal court. Prosecutors charged Dylan Roof with 33 federal counts, including hate crimes resulting in death. During the trial, investigators presented overwhelming evidence, witness testimony, digital records, and the suspect's own writings. The jury found him guilty on every charge. In January 2017, the court sentenced him to death under federal law. Later, he pleaded guilty to additional state charges and received multiple life sentences. For many families, the verdict provided a measure of justice, but it could never undo what happened that night. Chilling ending. Remembering the 7 o'clock. The 9 victims of the attack are now known as the Emmanuel 9. Their names are remembered not for the violence that ended their lives, but for the lives they lived. Teachers, mothers, fathers, leaders in their community. In the months after the tragedy, something remarkable happened. The church reopened, services resumed, and the congregation continued gathering for prayer inside Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. The same building, the same faith, the same message of unity. Because even after one of the darkest nights in its history, Mother Emmanuel refused to let hate have the final word.